Some geopolitical shifts do not arrive with noise and fireworks. They are not accompanied by marches, press conferences, or magazine covers. They happen quietly, like a crack in glass that is barely noticeable at first but then shatters the whole structure. This is exactly what Canada's pivot in global politics looks like today. While the world is busy with elections in the U.S., a crisis in Asia, and conflicts in Eastern Europe, a tectonic shift is slowly but surely maturing on the other side of the Atlantic. It could change the entire balance of power in the West. The subject here is Canada, and its suddenly clear desire to reconsider the entire foundation of its relationship with the U.S. To put it simply, is Canada planning to run from Washington into the arms of Brussels? Formally, no. Geographically, definitely not. But politically and economically, it certainly looks that way. Because when a country changes the first foreign trip of a new prime minister from Washington to Paris, it's not a protocol error. It's a signal. And this signal was heard everywhere, in the Pentagon, the White House, Brussels, and even in Beijing. The reason? Ottawa's profound disappointment with Washington, and a firm bet on resetting its role in the Western architecture. Yes, legally Canada cannot join the European Union, but that's just on paper, because the very definition of a European country in the EU Charter is vague. There have already been precedents. Cyprus, geographically part of Asia, has long been a member of the European Union. Turkey is a completely different case. It has been formally a candidate for many years. That means, if there is political will, a mechanism can be found. And here is where it gets most interesting. Canada is a country with high standards of public health care, strong democratic institutions, a free press, 2 official languages, including French, and a developed market economy. These already meet 2 of the so-called Copenhagen criteria for entry into the EU. All that remains is to implement EU legislation. It's difficult but feasible, especially if the goals are not so much legal membership as economic and military integration. Economic steps are already being taken. The CETA free trade agreement is in effect. More than 90% of tariffs have been eliminated. But the new Canadian government, led by Mark Carney, is making it clear this is not enough. The goal is not just to trade with Europe. The goal is to become part of its political and strategic architecture. And this is not about the economy. This is about breaking away from the U.S. For Washington, this is a real disaster. Losing Canada will not just disrupt trade balances. It will be a symbolic slap. It will mean one of the closest allies of the U.S. no longer believes in American leadership. It is a blow to the image, to the influence, to the entire America First doctrine. Next, there are defense questions. Canada has become the first non-European country to join the PESCO program, EU military cooperation. This means Canada de facto acknowledges, in case of a crisis, it will defend Europe, even if the U.S. refuses to intervene. What does this mean for NATO? What does this mean for the Arctic, where the U.S. previously held a monopoly? It's important to understand. The Arctic is not just ice and polar bears. It's routes, its resources, its logistics. And if Canada is increasingly coordinating with Europe, the U.S. influence in the region is rapidly declining, especially against the backdrop of Chinese activity and growing Russian interest. Now let's pay attention to internal processes. An Abacus data survey in February 2025 showed 68% of Canadians view the EU positively. Only 44% feel the same about the U.S. And the same 44% believe that Canada should consider moving closer to Europe up to joining. This is no longer a marginal idea. It's a trend, especially in the face of a tariff war. Washington, continuing the America First rhetoric, imposed 25% tariffs on Canadian goods, 50% on steel and aluminum. Canada responded in kind, and even more. It struck at key sectors of the American economy, from agriculture to high technology. This is no longer a dispute. This is a phase of open economic conflict. While Trump wields sanctions, Ottawa is signing agreements with Paris, discussing military exercises with Berlin, and opening new markets in Asia. The geography remains the same, but the political map has already changed. However, against this backdrop, processes are taking place within the U.S. that further exacerbate the situation. Dismissals of veterans from federal structures, more than 6,000 people in 1 month. People who served the country for decades are being thrown out onto the street. Food prices have catastrophically risen. Small businesses are suffocating under the tax and tariff burden. Research into diseases, including Alzheimer's, is being frozen due to budget sequestrations. Against this background, billionaires are presenting home robots for $30,000, while thousands of Americans are losing their pension savings. The gap between the political elite and ordinary citizens is becoming not just painful, it's dangerous. At the same time, the electorate is beginning to awaken. In Pennsylvania and Ohio, opposition candidates are winning. Where Democrats previously had no chance, now there is victory. People are beginning to vote not for slogans, but for common sense. The economic results of the great era of Trump? A $5 trillion decline in the stock market in 3 weeks. The national debt has grown by almost $8 trillion. GDP growth is lower than under Obama. Manufacturing jobs are down. Exports are in recession. The slogan, "Make America Great Again," is turning into bitter irony. 83% of tax breaks went to the super rich, and the ordinary American pays for everything, for inflation, for cutbacks, for the mistakes of the elite, and more often, votes not with their heart but with cold reason. And here's the main question. Can America keep Canada? Or is the moment already lost? We stand at a crossroads. One turn, and a years-long alliance can turn into a protocol of intent. Just a piece of paper, nothing more. The answer depends not only on Washington, it depends on all of us. So stay tuned. Write in the comments what you think, because when politics becomes a show, the audience has to pay. And if we want to remain citizens, not just spectators, it's time to speak up.